Hi, this is Tom, and welcome back to Life 4.0 and the final episode in our series on installing solar. In this video, we commission the inverter, pair the optimizers, set up the Solar Edge monitoring platform, and finally start producing power from the sun. Okay, so I've got my electrician completed with all the things he can do to wire in the solar feed into our panel. So next step for me is to set up the monitoring site on the Solar Edge website. It's a very nice thing to have, to be able to go on their site and to be able to monitor your solar array, the production it's putting out, troubleshoot any issues you might have with certain panels not performing. So I'll walk you through that process. And it's first off necessary to set yourself up on the Solar Edge site as an installer. So in order to set yourself up with an installer account, you wanted to go to the website called monitoring.solaredge.com, and it'll come up with this login page here, and you'll see a link here that says new installer. Click here. So that'll get the process started for creating a new installer account for you. Once you have the installer account set up, you'll need a couple other things. You'll need the paper where you put the stickers for each one of the optimizers on your array. I just put this on a scrap piece of paper that I have, but they actually on the Solar Edge site, they have a nice form that you can use to put these on. You can actually use it to scan in the information that we're going to manually enter. So you'll need that, and you'll also need a couple apps downloaded to your iPhone or Android device, and I'll walk you through that process as well. So I've got an Android device, but the process is pretty similar on an iPhone, again going to the App Store and iTunes. So under Google Play, you'll want to just search for Solar Edge, and that'll give you a couple apps here. There's a Solar Edge monitoring app that you want to download, and then there's also an app called Solar Edge Site Mapper. I think it's pretty much called the same thing in the Apple App Store. And so go ahead and install that. The other app you want to have here while you're at it is something called Setup, Inverter Setup, and that's to do the commissioning of the actual inverter. But again, today I'm just focusing on the setup of the panels with the optimizers using this site mapper. But you go ahead and download those three apps, and you'll be saving yourself time in the future. Okay, so I'm going to go to the site mapper app, and I'm clicking the plus, and I'm going to create a new site. And so this is creating information that will then be uploaded to the monitoring site, and you'll be able to set up more information there. But this is going to be the app that we're going to use to scan those codes that were coming from each one of the optimizers. So I'm just going to create a site name, and we've got a 10.5 kilowatt array. The install date was a couple weeks ago. Notes. Okay, so once use the device location, select module type. Ours is a rec solar, and then I can go ahead and create site. Okay, now to start scanning codes, I hit the plus sign at the bottom right here, and I'm going to create a module group first. It's a first list here. We're going to have two module groups, or strings is what they're normally called. I've got 28 panels, and I've got two strings of 14 panels each. So I'm going to create the first module group. Has 7 columns and 2 rows, and it's got this, the panels have a landscape orientation as opposed to portrait orientation. Angle is about 42 degrees, and azimuth is almost directly south at 180 degrees. Okay, so that's our first module. You can see I've registered 0 of 0 inverters and 0 of 14 panels. Okay, and so this next part, I'll be honest with you, is a little bit tricky in terms of, we're going to be scanning these codes with the camera on the phone, and it's important to kind of keep following across each one of the rows and watch that each one is registered on the display down here. There's going to be a beep that's going to be a confirmation, and if you hold too long on that code, it's going to give you a rather annoying beep that says that, hey, I've already registered this code. That's just a reminder to you to keep moving down along the way. All right, so again, I've got my first string of 14 panels here, and I'm going to hit this button up here near the top. That's to start the scanning process. It says, please select module inverter. So I'm going to select this first top left corner, which is the top left corner of our array. And the serial number is going to be shown up here in this box when I start scanning. All right, so I've got the little red box here. That's the area that I got to hover over that code. And I just want to make sure I'm starting at that first row. And that's the confirmation. And then the bad beep that I hung over it too long. And I'm just going to keep moving down here. Okay, so all 14 O's are done. You can tap on any one of the boxes and it'll show you the serial number, and you can double check that against the code at the top here. Now, if you ever make a mistake, you can just hit the X mark here. That'll clear out that registered serial number in that position, and you can rescan the code. And it's helpful to tap through and just to kind of do a quick double check to make sure that like at least the last two digits, 74, that they are all registered correctly. Okay, so we're all set there. I'm going to click Done, and I've got my first string. I'm going to click on the plus sign at the bottom again to do another module group. And this second string is also 7 columns, made up of 2 rows, same angle and azimuth, obviously, and a landscape orientation, not a portrait orientation. So then I've got my second string here, and I'm just going to follow the same process, going along this 3rd row and circling back on the bottom 4th row. Okay, all set there. I'm going to click Done there, and then I've got all 28 panels registered. Now I just have to register the inverter. The inverter is the same sort of thing. It's got a little one of these QR codes on the side of the inverter. So this is the Solar Edge inverter, and on the side over here is the code right here. So I'm going to go ahead and use that to scan. And again, on the phone, you hit the plus, and there's an option for, I don't know if you can see it here, but multiple inverters or just one inverter. I've only got one inverter, and I'm going to go ahead and tap on that little cell and the little scan button at the top, and now I've got the scan window, and there we go. I've scanned in the inverter. Okay, and I'm all done here. I've got one inverter registered out of 1 and 28 out of 28 panels, so I'm all done here. With the setup. Now I need to upload it to the site, and that's that button here with a little arrow into a cloud, and it says upload layout, and I click publish. Successfully published on server. And when I log into the site, it shows me this page with the first site here that I registered. You can see the name that I gave it, the information about it here as far as energy output. I don't have the actual array turned on yet, so there's no kilowatt hours shown there. But if I go under the site and go to layout, you can see this physical layout, and they also have a logical layout here. The physical layout shows the 2 module groups that I created and the inverter. Now if I go back here to admin, they've got several options here: site details, meter, reporting. But I want to take you over here to this physical layout tab. If you come down here, there's physical layout editing, and I can edit that published layout that I published from my phone and do a little bit more work with it. So here are the 2 module groups, and if you can move these around as you need to kind of arrange them to make sure that they look physically like your array. And then if you click next down here, you can go ahead and create strings. So I selected all these top 14 modules on my Mac. I held the command button down. I selected one and then kept going along here. And then I selected that I wanted to have that it be string 1, and I clicked on string it. And then I did the same thing with these bottom 14 panels. So I created 2 strings on here, and it color codes them differently. Then if you click publish down here, it'll publish that. Layout published successfully. Physical layout editor will now be closed. So that's the use of the web-based physical layout editor. You can do a little bit more and create those strings so that you're all ready when you're commissioning your inverter. Okay, I'm all done with setting up what I can on the monitoring site so far with scanning those codes from the optimizers. And what's left to do now is to finish up the commissioning on the inverter, and that's using that set app on your phone, your iPhone, your Android. This is for use on SolarEdge inverters that do not have a screen. Some of them have a little small LCD screen, and you can follow through the prompts and navigate menus on that. The new version that I bought does not have a screen, and you need to use your phone and the setup app to finish commissioning of that and go through the pairing process for it to pair each one of those optimizers with the inverter. Okay, there's a couple things you want to do before you actually get into the activation of the inverter. You want to make sure you have an internet connection to the inverter. I've done that with a wired LAN connection. You can get an additional module that allows you to connect through cellular and all those other things. That was just too complicated for me, so I've got a LAN connection here. I'm actually using a Wi-Fi extender to pick up the Wi-Fi signal in our house and bring it into a physical wired connection here. Runs through a hub because I'm going to do some other things with it, but then comes through this yellow Ethernet cable and goes inside the panel. It's pretty obvious once you open up the panel where that clicks into. But you want to have that set up ahead of time because you're going to be downloading firmware upgrades to the inverter, and you're also going to be sending data back out on that internet connection to the SolarEdge monitoring site. So you got to get that set up. The other thing is to turn on the AC breakers and disconnect switches. So for our house, we've got a disconnect switch on the outside where the solar array comes in and enters the house. We've also got this AC disconnect here that's separate from our panel and then the grid. So in our connection goes right in, ties directly into the panel. There's not an additional breaker on the panel. So I'm going to flip this up, and that's going to be sending current into the inverter. You can see it lit up now with the lights here that are red, yellow, and blue. And there's also this switch at the bottom, this disconnect here. You're going to want to turn that on as well. So now we're going to go to the phone, and you need to download an app called Setup. On my Android phone, it's right up here at the top, SolarEdge Inverter Setup. And I've already installed it, so I'm just going to go ahead and open that up. And you're going to need to register if you haven't already. So it's asking me to scan the QR code on the inverter. And I go over here and scan the QR code. There's a large QR code and a smaller one. You want to go with the larger one on the panel. And you can see now that it's installing that firmware. And how it's doing this is that it's creating a Wi-Fi connection between the inverter and the setup app. So you'll see your phone switching to that Wi-Fi network. Unfortunately, that Wi-Fi network isn't something that you can also use to connect the inverter to the outside world in terms of updating the solar monitoring platform, but it is specifically only used for this configuration step of the inverter. So if I were to go to my Wi-Fi connections, you can see it's connected to this SolarEdge Wi-Fi network and not to the internet. So we're going to let that continue on. It's got about 3 minutes left to download the firmware to the inverter, and then we'll continue with the next steps. And if for some reason you're on the app, it's not proceeding with the firmware download and installation, you can go to the switch on the inverter, and there's a 3-position switch just to the left of where the blinking lights are there. There's an on-off, and then there's a momentary position for what they call the P position. And you just have to slide that switch over to the P position for no more than 5 seconds, and that'll initiate the Wi-Fi connection on the inverter. And now it's activating the device. Okay, activation is complete. So it's showing our CPU version and other software related things, but the firmware has been updated and inverter has been activated. So the next step here is to start commissioning, and it's going to have a couple questions for us here. So commissioning, you want to set the country and language. US 240 volt is for us, and English is fine. And then you can start with the next step, which is pairing. So when I go here, tap the button below to start the pairing process. So it's going to pair with each one of the optimizers in the array, and this will obviously help us with our monitoring platform and troubleshooting any issues we have with any panels. So I click Start Pairing. Pairing complete. All right. Up here at top, it's saying that grid monitoring time left, and that's 221 seconds, so we'll let that finish. Okay, now you can see that the green light is solid. So if we go here to status, we're starting to see power output of 1.23 kilowatts, which I think is pretty consistent with a overcast day. So we are producing energy and pushing it out to the rest of the house. Anything else that we are producing in excess of what we're using in our house is going out to the grid. And the two lights here, the blue light indicates it has communication link to the solar edge monitoring platform, and the green light shows the production status. Flashing green light means it's still in the process of being activated, or wake up mode, and the solid green means it's actually producing power. Okay, so there you have it. Everything's activated and working. I'm just going to go now and show you the information on the solar monitoring site. So as the inverter is converting power to AC, it's sending updates through the Ethernet connection I've got here and out to the monitoring platform. So we'll go check that out. So here's the site here, and I've got just my one site here. If I click on the down arrow next to the site and go to layout, you will see all the panels, the 28 panels total in the array. Each one is outputting watts, and it tells you the watt hours of each panel, and then the total watt hours that the inverter has processed. So we know everything's working, and this is a place you can come to check out to see if there's a troublesome panel or if there's shading issues that maybe you can trim trees to deal with. Also, you can click on this show playback, and at least for today you can see when I activated the system just after 2 p.m. and we had a peak output there of about 1 kilowatt, and then it's been dropping down steadily as it gets closer to the end of the day. There's a whole bunch of charts and reports in here, so you can do lots of things here. You can see again that we activated the system right before 3 p.m. and I had a peak output of just over 1 kilowatt. And then it's been kind of up and down a little bit as there's been shading through the trees, and then it's down to 200 watts right now. So that's the site, and you can play around with this and do lots of sort of fun things there. The other option, if you want to use your mobile device to check out the status of your array, is you can go to the Solar Edge Monitoring app. This is on an Android device. I've already downloaded the app, but you can find it on the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. After you're done logging in, you'll see the similar information we saw on the web, and you've got current production. Like I said, it's down to very low numbers because it's near the end of the day. It's about 200 watts. You can see again your production, total watt hour production for today, this month, and lifetime. And then it's got the similar kind of graphs. So very handy. You can get to this obviously whenever you have an internet connection on your phone. And then you can go to the second tab here, which shows that panel by panel output. So very helpful there. That wraps up this 7-part series on installing solar. I hope you've enjoyed this step-by-step guide and that you will consider installing solar power at your home, business, or off-grid location. It really is not that hard to do and will give you the satisfaction of building something meaningful with your own hands. As always, we look forward to your comments, and if you enjoyed watching this video, please consider giving us a like, as it really helps others find this kind of content. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to be notified of our upcoming releases.